Yeah, if you have any question, so kindly send it to RPNA in the chat. And you can also join our community list and stay up to date with updates, information regarding rezoning, the community benefits, or you can send an email to rpna.info@gmail.com, and I will be responding to you in terms of any kind of queries, or if you want to be part of the coalition, please shoot me an email. Tonight, the facilitators would be me, myself, I'm Pavitra, and my fellow colleague, teammate, colleague, resident is Walid Kogali Ali.
I'm now going to go through our land acknowledgement. So I'd like to acknowledge that Toronto is built upon the traditional lands of the Mississauga, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, the Chippewa, and many other Indigenous people, and that these peoples have been the stewards of the land in Toronto and across Turtle Island for thousands of years. It's important to acknowledge the history of the lands that we are on, to stop and think about how the lands that we use today have supported and nourished other nations, other peoples, before we came to use them. We must acknowledge that we now benefit from the land and learn how we may continue to respect the histories and steward the land. I'd like to acknowledge that Canada is founded on white supremacy as a trade and commerce economy that continues to affect the lives and well-being of Indigenous peoples, putting economic greed in front of Indigenous rights. The understanding and acknowledgement of the peoples that came before is particularly relevant here in Regent Park, as it has been home to Indigenous people from time immemorial, but it's also been home to waves of tight-knit communities for more than 100 years. Regent Park's history includes multiple efforts to tear down and rebuild, with each iteration of the neighborhood washing away the connections to the people, lives, and communities that were here before. As a richly diverse community, displacement is something that many Regent Parkers feel deeply as part of the history of the land and part of their own histories as newcomers, descendants of the transatlantic slave trade, and other forms of imperialism, and as community members that have called Regent Park home before and during the most recent period of revitalization. This meeting has been organized by the Regent Park Neighbourhood Association, a community-led neighborhood association that respects the Indigenous cultural worldview that is based in kinship, taking care of our community, the people, and the land, and sharing what we have with those around us. The process of revitalization here in Regent Park offers us an opportunity through the social development plan to honor the histories of the Mississaugas, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Chippewa, as well as the people that have called Regent Park home over the last century, and to preserve the spirit of community, neighborliness, and advocacy that has been so vibrant within our community. We can acknowledge the history of the land and are committed to stewarding it and preserving it. Thank you.
Thank you, Walid. And next is the purpose of meeting.
So the purpose of our meeting today, my friends, is to inform the community about important decisions that will be made about the future of Regent Park over the next months and the decades to come. We want to hear from you. We want to hear from you. We want to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to get involved, and decisions that will affect the community and the lives of Regent Park residents are taken into consideration. So thank you for joining us. That's one of the main purposes of our meeting today.
I would now like to let you all know about the agenda for tonight's meeting. Now we are going to give you a quick background about RPNA, the community benefits, and everything about the benefits and RPNA that you should be aware of, what's happening here in Regent Park. And then we're going to talk about rezoning. And after that, we're going to have a Q&A session where we will be answering to any of your questions that pertains to rezoning or anything that is related with Regent Park. And then we will give a quick overview about community benefits agreement. What kind of community benefits we can have as residents here in Regent Park and how you can be part of it. That is, we're going to discuss about that. And then finally, the next steps, the actions and next steps towards securing the community benefits and everything.
Yeah, I just want to share that this space is dedicated to creating an equitable, diverse, and inclusive meeting opportunity for all races, genders, classes, abilities, ages, cultures, religions, and sexualities. This is a safe space to speak, but please remember that this event will be recorded, live streamed to YouTube, and translated. So what is shared this evening will be publicly available for future audiences, both within and beyond the Regent Park community. Thank you.
The next piece is very important. So we would like to take a moment of silence to honor the life and contributions of Thane Murray. Thane Murray was killed in our park, in Regent Park, not too long ago. Thane has known many of our neighbors, many community members. He's someone I personally knew, and I know his loss has affected many members of our community. So we commemorate the lives and contributions of Thane Murray, a community member and youth worker that will be missed by family, friends, and loved ones. Let's just take 1 minute. Okay, thank you, everyone. This work is not possible without community leadership. And this is a nice photo of a milestone that we were able to reach, which was a community benefits framework, which was signed between RPNA, the Regent Park Neighbourhood Association, as well as Toronto Community Housing.
RPNA itself was formed in 2015 to create a unified voice in our community and represent the interests of all residents. Our main focus at RPNA has always been social cohesion. The bringing together of our two communities in this new chapter of Regent Park, and based on the values and principles of the Social Development Plan. We're made up of a small elected group of volunteers. One half of us are of our leadership team are TCHC residents, and the other half are market residents. We have two co-chairs. One is TCH, is Ishmael, and the other, myself, is a market representative. And our mandate is focused on advocacy, meaningful community engagement, and community building. We're a small group of elected volunteers.
The work of the Neighborhood Association for the past few years have been quite remarkable, given the challenges and what shifting events that have been happening in our neighborhood. One of the most important activities we've engaged in is what's called the Community Benefits Coalition. In that coalition, it was started by RPNA's advocacy wing and in partnership with local organizations and the Toronto Community Benefits Network. This work began after the news that phases 4 and 5 would go through a rebid process and that there might be a possibility of a new developer partner. We began the work knowing that in phases 4 and 5, all of the learnings we learned from phases 1 and 2 and 3 could be improved. And we've created a broad and inclusive coalition of residents, grassroots groups, and local service providers. Our goal was always to ensure equitable community benefits, including economic development opportunities for residents, are not only guaranteed, but directed by community as part of the phase 4 and 5 redevelopment. Next slide. In that work, there's been tremendous accomplishments all throughout the year. RPNA itself has been renewing its internal structure and community and advocacy. We've been trying to create community opportunities and engagement to have a broad coalition. And of course, in our efforts to advocate, some of the main wins we've gotten through the work of RPNA is the securing of 2.5 million for the social development plan in partnership with the SDP stakeholders table. And along the way, we wanted to have much more say in community benefits. So that's why we've been part of making sure in the request for proposal process, making sure that the rules governing who will be a new developer supported community interest. So we advocated for several committees. One of them is the RFP committee, and we've successfully made sure that the development proposal call had community elements. Some of the successes of that is the changing the language from economic development to community benefit. And we've succeeded in doing that, as well as making sure that the social development plan has funding allocation as part of community benefit. We've also helped support the developer selection process by providing input and engagement through the developer presentation, where hundreds of community members came to add their voice in the developer presentation. One of the biggest success we've had is the securing of a community benefits framework. In that framework, for the first time, communities had a role and responsibility and a clear process for how community will be involved. This was signed by RPNA in partnership with Toronto Community Housing. Among the other accomplishments is we've created a community priorities report where communities across the neighborhood came together at the Fred Victor building, more than 100 community members on a Sunday night, and we prioritized some of the main priorities the community wanted to see in community benefits. Next slide. So some of the reason why we have been working very hard is we wanted to learn from phases 1 and 2 and 3. And of course, in the past 15 years of revitalization, there have been many benefits that we've received from phases 1 and 2 and 3, but also there have been some challenges. Some of the benefits include the Daniel spectrum, what it calls 16 million from the federal government, 16 million from the province, and the Daniels Corporation and Toronto Community Housing giving the land for $1, a tremendous community benefit. That's exactly where I'm calling from tonight. I'm at the 3rd floor of the Daniels Spectrum, a community, what it calls space for residents. Some of the other benefits included SIF funding to support the social development plan, what it called Daniels contributed funds to help kickstart $1 million, what it called funding with United Way, so that the social development plan could be supported. The athletic ground was an extra addition that was never thought to be part of phases 1 and 2 and 3. And of course, an innovative commercial retail opportunity for entrepreneurs in the neighborhood. Some of the challenges also have been what you call an inconsistency around job creation and the reporting of the number of jobs that have been secured in phases 1 and 2 and 3. I believe at the time it was meant to be 10% of all construction. It's unclear whether those targets have been met. Qualities of construction, residents have reported that there's a lack of qualities in construction. And of course, this has meant a significant delay in what was thought to be the first phases of revitalization. And of course, there's a huge concern around the reduction of the proportion of TCHC to market. At the original envision, it was meant to be greater than 30%, 35, but now it's reducing more and more. This has also meant an increase in density, what they call a lack of consultation on some pieces. So also there's been what they call at the board level, inconsistencies around transparency and reporting around the whole of revitalization. There's been the ombudsman who has been involved in also showcasing that in a report that they've created to TCHC board. So there have been many challenges and some wins in phases 1 and 2 and 3. And we wanted to make sure that phases 4 and 5, there was lessons learned and that the community had a greater say in that process.
what we're trying to improve on is a record that wasn't intentional. So according to the City of Toronto's report, most recent report in 2019, from 2014 to 2019, about 259 part-time jobs were created. So there was no tracking before 2014. And 33 residents, just take that in, 33 residents had full-time jobs. 17 residents had access home ownership. So this did not benefit the residents of Regent Park. That's what the facts stipulate. And what we're trying to do is make sure that in phases 4 and 5, that the residents of Regent Park benefit. So I just want to encourage folks, especially those that have joined and wanting to know more about home ownership, or as we like to call it, rent to own, right? And folks who are looking for good jobs. We are going to make it possible for folks to have this information so they're able to access good jobs and this program. Some of the two programs that existed that benefited folks was the Foundation Program, which provides eligible Toronto community housing tenants living in Regent Park, Lawrence Heights, Alexandra Park, or Allenbury Gardens with down payment assistance for up to 35% of the price of a new home in the revitalization community. So now we're hoping to push it from 35% to 45%. Do you know why? Homes went up from 330,000 to 1.3 million. Who can afford 35%? Right? It's not possible. So we're trying to push for a much more realistic program that will support more residents. The Boost program also helps eligible home purchases with their down payment by providing assistance for up to 10% of the price of a new home in the TCHC revitalization community. Again, homes are 1.3 million. That is not enough, okay? And our goal is through a community benefits agreement to secure much more realistic programs that can support residents today. So we want to work with TCHC and Tridel to establish better processes and outcomes for phases 4 and 5. So we want a partnered collaboration. So we're not just bystanders. We are not bystanders in this community. We want to be actively involved by co-creating and co-designing what those community solutions should look like. We want community decision-making. The reason why phases 1 to 3 were a failure was because community members were not in decision-making capacity, especially there were no processes that made that possible. And decision-making looks different. Some people want to get involved in making sure that the design of future units meets their expectation. Folks want to be part of decisions that speak to hard targets. So how do we hire locally? How many? Those are things that are super important. Early consultation and information sharing. We don't want to hear about things at the last minute. We want to have a conversation with the community that's focused on solution. Transparency and reporting. Ishmael talked about how we failed in tracking and reporting during phases 1 to 3. We want to improve on that. We want to follow through on accountability. Who is this development for? Who does it benefit? If it benefits the residents of Regent Park, we need to have that as a commitment. And also a commitment to the 12 principles of revitalization. All this work we do to build social cohesion and inclusion are informed by those 12 principles, which we'll talk about next. And also we want clear structures and mechanisms for achieving the above. Now we're going to move on to the 12 principles.
Yeah, these are the 12 planning principles. They've been in place since the redevelopment started. One of the most important, they're all important, of course, but one of the most important is the 4th principle, that the community would be involved in the process. You know, this is something that we feel very strongly about, and we mean the entire process. So, you know, it's very important to know that these are 12 planning principles, and they're not going away. They're going to continue throughout all the redevelopment right to the end.
Thank you so much, Dini. So we're going to have a discussion regarding rezoning, my friends. This is the first part of our community-wide discussion. The second one is going to be focused on community benefits, as we outlined in our agenda earlier tonight. So rezoning is a big endeavor. It does change the makeup of our neighborhood. Rezoning means there'll be more people living within square foot. So I just want to give you some context. For phases 4 and 5, it's 1.4 million square foot that is going to be built.
There is a rezoning application that will be submitted to the city for phases 4 and 5. So this application will be going up to the city. It was supposed to be December, but Toronto Community Housing and Tridel has decided to push it back a little bit. And now it's looking like it's going to go in January, February. This rezoning will be asking to increase density. But when it comes to rezoning, what is meant by zoning bylaw is to regulate land use. It provides a framework for growth, and it talks about population density and building heights. Rezoning will have significant physical and social character of the neighborhood. It will change how the community's value is looked into and the properties that are in the community. Tridel have shared some basic plans with the community, with the engagements that they have done, but no decisions have been made yet so far. We are asking that the community be included into these decision-making before they are submitted. There is discussions happening with the councillor and with the city, but the community is really not aware what these decisions look like. What we know so far is that density will increase. There will be towers up to 30 stories. There will be also amenities that are coming in. Some of the amenities that are coming in are a library and a community access to some spaces. Some of the benefits that are hopefully that we are negotiating is more community benefits. Nothing is confirmed yet, but we know that the city is also looking into affordable rental housing and RGI units. So far, what we are sure of that is better employment is coming, hopefully. Some community members have been hired by Tridel, so that is definitely some good news. There is more employment, hopefully, with have been already secured with the 28. Some of the cons will be that already because of there are some delays to constructions. Phases 1, 2, and 3, it was estimated is going to be a 15-year of redevelopment, but the timeline is definitely increased. So that means that some residents are still in the old buildings and they would love to be part of the new community with their new buildings. Some of the cons are density will be going up, and because of that, the neighborhood services and facilities will have a hard time coping with it. Also, because of the densities that are going up, the concern is that there will be taller towers, and some of these towers are coming into Regent Park rather than going into the outside of it. Some of the designs that we have seen showcases how some towers will be in Oak Street. The first rezoning application, like I have said, will go into January, and that application, the city, once it goes into the city process, there will be opportunities within the city process that things can change. But before these things are changing, we would like to really have community discussions and community ideas that will be taken in. We are asking Tridel and our councillor for more transparency and meaningful engagement. Some of the engagement is only have been taken in. So we want also some of these things to be accepted, to be in the plans. So hopefully more transparency. We want to also review what is being submitted to the city. Hopefully what is being submitted is something that the community, all of us can stand behind. And we're asking that those plans be shared with us earlier, and the discussions that the community is having have shown up into those documents. We are also asking that when residents are being engaged, that they're engaged in not just one-way engagement, but really a collaborative engagement.
And we're going to have a question and answer period. This is the time that members of the community can ask questions. We have a lot of people that attended today, 100 residents. For those in attendance, what are your concerns or questions regarding rezoning? Go ahead.
So I have first question from KD. It says, I am a resident of Regent Park, and that person is interested in the rent to own program. Can you provide me with more information?
Excellent. So Katie, like I said earlier, there were two programs, Boost and Foundation programs, that existed during the first three phases of revitalization. And when those programs existed, there was funding. There was funding that was committed by other levels of government to make those programs sustainable. What happened was homes went up from 330,000 to 1.3 million. So they went up by $1 million in asset value over a span of a couple of years, almost 5 years or less. Because of that, those programs were suspended. So what we're hoping to do is secure more funding to make it possible for folks to be able to be incentivized when it comes to home ownership. And we're looking into programs that will help make it possible for residents of Regent Park, many of them TCHC residents, many folks who've been here for decades, to access those opportunities. I hope that answers your question.
In the 12 principles that we presented, that we showed now, so Darlene basically mentions that there is nothing about transportation in the area. And she thinks it's very important because be in public transport and have good roads.
That's an excellent remark. Transit is very important to our community, and it's also thinking about how transit is offered in this community. And that's actually a good point.
I don't know if you guys are aware of just the recent addition of bike lanes on the river in Dundas area.
Yes.
As I mentioned in the comment, they put up quite a few large towers. This is Daniel's. But, you know, going in and out of that area, it's become really, really congested. You know, there's TTC on both sides, cars trying to go into the DVP. So transit is one thing, but traffic congestion is massive. How is that going to be mitigated?
Excellent question. And those are the solutions that we're seeking. You are right. There is going to be an increase in traffic, especially due to the fact that we are a very active community. And if we are going to have, I guess, more buildings in our neighborhood, there's social costs that come with an increase in density. So how do we remedy the social costs? How do we invest intentionally to make sure that the residents of Regent Park don't pay the price, right? That's what's unfortunately happening. On the streets, I hear a lot of people complain about lack of parking. It's not just transit, there's transportation challenges that we must address collectively as a community. And Rasha, I want to thank you for that comment, but I also want you to get involved with our coalition and with your neighborhood association so that we could advocate that sustainable position of making sure that the investments are made in our community to better support residents deal with those social costs.
Absolutely. Waleed, if you don't mind,
go ahead, Rasha.
If I just want to add one more point, in the PowerPoint slides, you mentioned that a lot of the density is being pushed into the Regent Park area, and often they get bunched into one area. And you mentioned Cabbagetown. I know the Cabbagetown Association has quite a lot of power because, again, I don't know if it's single homeowners with a massive amount of property, but what can we do to mitigate it? I mean, it shouldn't seem fair that, we are subjected to large density, lack of sunlight, a lot of congestion, and then right next to us, there's a plethora of spaces protected in heritage homes. How can we mitigate that portion?
So far, we have seen some designs that talk about where to put the high density. There are three options so far that they have placed on us. So some of the options is really looking into oak, and some of the options is looking into spreading that density around Gerard and Oak. So because where they're building phases 4 and 5, the towers either go to Gerard or they either go to Oak. So we can have a really, the community can actually push towards how to put these towers not in only one streets, but both streets. So as Walid said, the only power the community has is the power of numbers. And if folk today, what is illustrated is that not only is there 100 people here, but we have a lot of people who are waiting. So hopefully, if all of us in the neighborhood engage with this rezoning, we can influence what those buildings, where they go. And it really depends on all of us to voice that concern. Thank you.
And with the recent City of Toronto regulation that new buildings and new development, especially near transit hubs, I would say Regent Park is very connected to a lot of transit areas. Will we see more social housing being built? Because I know that was also a point, and that should be pressed, because this is TCHC land and this is housing land. But
Excellent.
only it's replaced with what we had, but we don't get any more, and that's not fair. Housing is
You're
too
right.
expensive.
You're right. A lot of people in our community don't even know that there is a Moss Park subway station coming. Did you know that?
So just to make things a bit more balanced as well, if you look at the ask to for the rezoning process, some of the things that are pushing for a big rezoning is that there is a consideration of putting more affordable housing into this phase. And what that means is that those affordable housing would have to be paid for in some fashion or the other. Some of it will come from the federal government, but also there might be further considerations of putting rent to geared income units as well. And the way that those have been traditionally paid for is by market units. So I think one of the complexities here is that some of the things that is pushing for higher density and higher rezoning would be to pay for some of these affordable units and RGI units. So I just wanted to add that piece.
My concern is, how do we as a community, and realizing that I'm a privileged member of this community, and so my voice is limited and biased, how do we develop the developer who's building 30-story building with several thousand people in it to be mindful of the necessary infrastructure so that we don't create more problems than we solve by putting up these large buildings?
Well said, Michael. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to secure a community benefits agreement that will outline what those community-led solutions look like, what those interventions look like. Because in the past, when you didn't have one, they just did what they did. And then we saw the record, right? We saw the track record. And because of that, I'm dealing with complaints from residents today about storage space in their own housing unit that they have to live with for decades to come. Let's not repeat those mistakes. So thank you, Michael. Join our Community Benefits Coalition. Help us secure a community benefit agreement that commits in writing to those specific community needs. No more are we going to just be told what is going to happen. We want to hold people accountable.
I have two questions. First of all, I'm asking, RPNA has any agenda for rent to own for low-income people? There is many community members. They are working with us for, you know already, we
hundreds of residents. Yes, I know.
So you have any agenda? Yes. And secondly, phase 4 and 5, they have any plan for, like us, many organizations run by tenants, not like agency.
Excellent.
We have no office space. So we need RPNA support phase 4 and 5, like our organization. We have no office space, nothing. You know everything.
What we know, Brother Shahan, is there's a desperate need for community governed space. We've heard that many times. People don't want to just run stuff from 9 to 5. Our youth want to do stuff in the evening. Our seniors want to do stuff in the evening, or at other times. Our cultural communities have programs that need to be done beyond 9 to 5. So a community governed space will make that possible.
Yeah, we're in the process. The RPNA is in the process of incorporating right now, which shouldn't be much longer. And we've also been guaranteed some space in the Daniel Spectrum. And we plan on sharing some of that space. But, and they're building a new space inside there that we don't quite know. I can't really speak about it at this point, but we certainly, that's part of our plan, is to be able to share a bit of it. That is a primary plan right now.
So my question is, before Daniel do the same promises, they're gonna bring, they did some booster program for the residents, but we don't know when is the booster coming and go and finish, and who is the people buy from the Regent Park. And the same thing, I have a question like from Tridel, they're gonna bring the same thing for the community, like rent to own and the RGI, so many apartments, and for affordable rent, Regent Park people. So so is any like chances for the community to get the affordable housing? And RGI, the people are really waiting for like 13 or 14 years. They never get the affordable rent. They never get the RGI apartment. And the other thing, rent to own. If they bring the rent to own, my question is, really they're gonna communicate with the residents, or they're gonna go under
good
the
question.
table?
Yes.
And under the table.
Excellent question. That is a big critique. That's why we pointed to the 2019 City of Toronto report that spoke to only 7. Actually, the 17 number is the most recent number we got from TCHC, right? Because the number we had was 12. It's only 17. And what's surprising is it's over 260, a lot of people that didn't live in Regent Park that benefited from access to home ownership. They became multimillionaires in a span of 5 years just by putting a down payment. And the residents that have been living in this community, dealing with bed bugs, elevator issues, safety issues, were given a slap to the face. And what I mean by a slap to the face is they were not intentional in recruiting residents and making sure they're able to qualify. There was no duty of care demonstrated to ensure that residents were prepared for home ownership. Your neighborhood association wants to change that. We want to work with all of you to prepare you for home ownership, to make sure the regulations, we want to lobby our levels of governments to make sure the regulations allow you to be qualified to access home ownership. At the end of the day, the banks still run the show. And we have to make sure the banks make it possible for residents to be able to access home ownership. So Iram, I can tell you with certainty, there's a commitment. There's a commitment from the Neighborhood Association, from the coalition to secure community benefit agreements that speaks to how much residents will be able to access home ownership and how we can help residents prepare for that. Because you're right, we have to be intentional.
But Mike, like I live in an affordable house in Regent Park, 13 years. Like I knock the door, every single person in this community. I reach every person TCSC. So that's why I question this one. So if the affordable housing and RGI apartment is coming for exactly for the Regent Park people, or they're gonna bring more outsider again?
I think we have to have certain expectations. When it comes to RGI and affordable, like you said, with RGI, there is thousands of people in the waiting list. And this waiting list is all over Toronto, and people have been on it 30 years. So when they do build these RGIs, it's not for Regent Park only. It is actually, there is a waiting list. So that waiting list will go into effect. people who are in the waiting list will access it from all over the city. And the same thing for the affordable ones. They have systems in place. And like the 150 River, when that came out, there was a lottery, people applied and there was a lottery. So these systems are already in Toronto community housing systems. So I don't think we can really say that only people who live in Regent Park can access it.
Yeah.
It's a citywide accessible program.
I just want to add in sort of the community benefits negotiations, we're talking about hiring locally, benefits locally, specifically talking about equity seeking groups in Regent Park, because we realize there's a lot of challenges that are faced by many racialized members of our community. So we are being intentional in making sure those gaps are met. Irum, I want to thank you for volunteering and supporting your neighbors, get information, and thank you for advocating for accessible home ownership, making it possible for the residents of Regent Park to benefit.
So what I wanted to know was that when it comes to this, to the rent to own program,
yes, brother.
Is there any discussions with regards to the interest-free possibility, seeing that a lot of the community members are of the Muslim or Islamic religion that are who actually have to, based on the religion, abstain from dealing with interest. Another thing I wanted to mention was the TCHC and the RPNA. If there is any discussions that are happening with the different youth programs that are happening, seeing that these developments have a long-term effect on the community. So getting their input and having that discussion with them will definitely help in realizing exactly what it is that the community really needs, and how the RPNA and TCHC can actually leverage what is being discussed.
We know there's a lot of members of our community that have asked for that interest-free loans to be able to access this programs related to home ownership. That's a point that we're going to continue to raise to make sure that if we are going to reform, boost, and foundational programs that were accessed by residents in the past, could we make those changes to push for more access? And I think that's a good point, and it's something we can explore.
I think in many ways, as I said before, there'll be a 1-year process of conversation about community priorities and community benefits. And I think it's up to the community in terms of what they want to prioritize. And there's gives and takes about home ownership. I think this will involve contribution from the federal government and other levels of government if the program needs to happen again. And I think those conversations are with the federal government and but also this needs to be communicated to Toronto community housing as an interest and as a community priority. Home ownership has been identified as a priority in our priorities report, but I think you'll have further opportunities in this upcoming year to showcase the level of interest. And of course, as many of you know, the program is highly, the level of investments is huge, and we have to compare it to the returns. So I think that will be an interesting conversation the community will have. Thank you.
We're going to be focusing on the next part of our meeting on the community benefits agreement. So I'll quickly talk about community benefits, the community benefits agreement. Community benefit agreements exist across Canada. They're found in jurisdictions like Vancouver, and they're usually signed in other parts of Canada between Indigenous people and an authority, whether it's a city government or a developer. So Indigenous people have used community benefit agreements to ensure that the investments are made in the community and that the wealth stays in the community, right? So good jobs, so home ownership, all of that stuff happens locally. Community benefits, when it comes to phases 1 to now, we've talked about how there was no tracking, there was no monitoring. Ishmael spoke about some examples like Daniel Spectrum. We also, the aquatic center, there's a couple of examples of investments that were made. But what I would like for folks to know is that there was a mix of results on community benefits for phase 1 to 3. Earlier, we talked about how many residents benefited from home ownership and good jobs. 33 residents access good jobs, only 17 residents access home ownership. So we're hoping to improve on phases 1 to 3 by making sure that we have a community benefits agreement, one that is between the developer partners and the community to ensure that those investments are made. The other thing that we also need to remember is the SDP. The SDP is the Social Development Plan, and there's a stakeholders table. There are folks from residents, agencies, folks who support this work, city staff. They all sit on the SDP stakeholders table. And the City of Toronto has funded the Regent Park community $500,000 every year for 5 years. After 5 years, this funding runs out. So we have about $2.5 million to spend on projects and specific investments that will build on social cohesion and inclusion through the 4 working groups of the SDP. So the 4 working groups are safety. So this one called safety, this one called EED, economic development, is community building, and is communications. What I also want to talk about is how we can continue to organize to demand better outcomes for communities, for our community for phases 4 and 5. How do we do that? Well, we all got together, and it was said earlier in this meeting, and came up with a community priorities report that spoke about community governed space, that spoke about home ownership, or other people may call it rent to own, that spoke about local hiring. Specifically, we want 50% of the jobs that are created in Regent Park to be hired locally so that residents benefit from this investment. We also talked about a sustainability fund. We're going to be talking about all of that stuff later, but this is important things to remember. We do not just want an investment in the buildings, the infrastructure. We want an investment in the people, okay? You cannot have social cohesion with just investments in infrastructure. You need to invest in the people. And when we looked at the community priorities, it costed over $100 million. This is according to TCHC's estimate, maybe even more, okay? What we were able to secure is 26.8, which is a quarter of what the community priorities report cost will be. And that's from Tridel. The other, and TCHC, as recently announced, we also secured a community benefits framework, which was signed by the RPNA and TCHC, which speaks to that 1-year process where all of you, everyone on this call, will have an opportunity to communicate what they think the investments should be made in, right? And we're going to have a conversation with you folks about how that looks like. Another thing that I would like for people to know is that we did secure funding from the SDP, which makes a lot of this work possible, specifically in our community when it comes to making sure residents access employment opportunities and other opportunities through the stakeholders table. So what are we asking for? So we were asking to co-design a legally binding community benefits agreement by local residents and stakeholders. We've learned a lot from Indigenous people. We've learned a lot when it comes to accountability and transparency. We want community decision making about how the $26 million should be spent. We want a commitment from TCHC and Tridel to spend this money in the community for the benefit of Regent Park residents, especially TCHC residents and members of equity-seeking groups. We want clear targets, regular reporting, and accountability measures. We need those pieces to make sure that no one is left behind in this project, especially those that want those opportunities. And we also want support from our counselor for this vision and a community agreement on the zoning application before it is submitted.
The first point that is saying here, we want a tri-party community benefit agreement. So this is a document that really showcases how the community becomes a true partner with TCHC and Tridel. We were seeking to sign a document with TCHC and Tridel to really say that this community and its representatives are true partners. We have had some obstacles and some challenges why this is impossible or not feasible. The community really thinks this path of getting an agreement that is signed between the neighborhood association and Tridel and TCHC is one that makes sense. We thought that this will get us all the things that we are asking underneath it possible. But the city has shown us that they do have a community benefit framework, and that framework is actually a new framework and is not asking communities to be a signatory people. We have examples around the world and within the indigenous community that communities can become signatory, but we've been having challenges. So the coalition is going to look back into how, if this is feasible for us to ask for a tri-party. There are ongoing strategy discussions, whether we sign this agreement with them or whether, as how they say in the city or how TCHC says, this is not feasible. But the other things that why we want to be signatory is what's underneath. There is a community oversight working group that will be structured under the social development table. This group will be responsible in making certain decisions. And some of the decisions we really are asking is that the 26.8 that was identified as community benefits, that the decision should not only be made by TCHC and Tridel, but that this oversight and with the help of the community, we get to, first thing we got to decide how much money to spend where. Do we spend money? There are three categories: employment, scholarships, money towards the SDP, and what else? And these decisions, we want the community to really have not just an input, but the power to make these decisions with the master developer, which is TCHC and Tridel. We are also asking that if money is to be identified for the SDP, the social development plan, and the 4 tables, that money be decided by the community rather than by TCHC. We are also asking that relevant strategies and studies be done. In phases 1 and 2, so many of the grassroots have been left undocumented. I'm talking about organizations that are in the basements of Gerard. So many of them undocumented, they are unknown. Thankfully, TCHC and Tridel has agreed to do this study, and we did ask that this study be done under collaboration with us, and they did agree, and meetings are currently happening. We are also asking that there's this document consultation strategy report that RPNA should be identified as a stakeholder, and that before they submit anything to the city, we're really hoping that we see what these documents have, whether we have been heard or we have been just listened to and ignored. So these are detailed asks we are asking, and hopefully we can, with your help, some of these things we can advocate to get it.
Yeah, so in many ways, our conversation with Toronto Community Housing has been quite very difficult. And some of the reasons why it's been difficult is because there's been a shift in staff from staff that we've been working with throughout the years, and staff that have all staff have been replaced from the director level to the management level to the front line. And what this has meant is that none of the new staff are very much quite familiar with the neighborhood, and in many ways, old habits, and old understandings that have been adopted from different neighborhoods has been brought back to Regent Park. The future of Regent Park is a mixed income community where Toronto community housing residents and market residents complement one another, and we try to build a cohesive and an inclusive community. However, there's been many resistance to that vision. And what I mean is two examples. One is the social development plan, which we've all created together, where organizations, residents, be they market and TCH, all sit together to think about some of the problems of the neighborhood and to co-develop the solution. One of the things that one of the approach that TCHC want to take is a one-directional approach where they are in charge of the whole process. And what we've been arguing for is a collaborative process under the stakeholders table. Toronto Community Housing sees community benefits as their domain. They see this as a TCHC piece. However, in our community benefit framework that we've signed, we've all agreed that the process is about under the SDP stakeholders table. There's also a lack of appreciation for the existing neighborhood infrastructure, like the role of the neighborhood association. It's been the case that they prefer to not leverage the existing neighborhood association, and sort of a pivoting, an internal struggle have been created between the Toronto Tenant Council and the neighborhood association. And this has become disastrous because we knew that in order to make a future neighborhood where both market residents and Toronto community housing are cohesive, we needed a neighborhood association that represented a 50-50% model. Because these new TCAC staff are familiar with that vision, the old institutions, there's an insistence on only speaking to the tenant council and not a joint effort of a cohesive community. Also, it's been very difficult to negotiate anything from the big pieces to even the smaller pieces. So we've been running into several roadblocks. Also, what I would want to say is that this whole process is one of the things we're most concerned about is a rush timeline, and that these rush timelines would delay important conversations and we would not be able to move forward. We are having conversations about community benefit at the same time having conversations about rezoning. And we know that the importance of community decision-making. So we're hoping that through the support of community, and the support of our councillor, Toronto Community Housing and its new staff will gain an appreciation for a cohesive community. And I hope that most of you will join us in our coalition work, in our neighborhood association, so that together we co-build this cohesive community. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm interested as far as the community benefits agreement, especially in terms of, having people in Regent Park, getting good jobs and, being part of this, being able to benefit from the long term. I think what might be helpful is to, to get a sense of the skill set that might be, to make sure that there is a match there. Because I think sometimes, the best laid plans of a community benefit agreement might say like, we'll try our best to make sure that we, have community members get those jobs, but then the small print will say, but if we can't find someone who is, who fits the right thing, then we're open to get that, give that job to someone else. So I think, especially since it's so early on, maybe what would be a good start is to, not that you can necessarily nail down every single job that's going to be needed, but to get a better sense of those skills and maybe try to find a way to start building up that skill set here in Regent Park so that they can't say like, oh, we couldn't find someone here that could do that.
Well said, Jen. And we actually have been thinking about that intentionally. I don't know if Tamjid is part of our meeting, but Tamjid is our EED lead. I call him the jobs guy. I call him the jobs person in Regent Park, because his responsibility is that specifically to try to identify what skills do folks in our community might need, what job readiness programs do we need in our community to best support residents access good jobs. So Jen, thank you for your wisdom.
So the good thing about when it comes to employment is that with the Tridel team, that they have an employment person also. And this employment person, we will put the contacts in, and she is able to what from the conversations we heard, is not just going to be construction jobs. She will also be helping with other levels of jobs in the market, and finding ways to get residents to be part of those job calls. There is a website that is up that talks about this revitalization when it comes to TCHC information. And that website, if you go into it, you can see how they can help with many sorts of jobs. Part of the 26 portion of it that is for employment locally in the community. So thankfully, the team that is working on it is really a good team, and some of the community members already have been hired, and more will be hired soon.
Yeah, I just want to mention that, you know, we're trying to secure good jobs in our community. That's an intentional effort. We don't want residents to be in part-time employment. This pandemic has exposed so much inequality. You know, there's a lot of our neighbors who are essential workers who make it possible for the city and this province to run. They must be treated with respect. So I think it's important for us to work together to ensure that the opportunities we have are good jobs. You know, I don't want our community to just be a neighborhood of just millionaires, right? You know, now having a full-time job is not enough. In fact, to qualify for a home, your household income must be over 200,000. Who makes 200,000? Nobody. Very rare. So we need to make it possible for people to access a basic human right, okay, which is home ownership.
So yeah, I just want to give a couple of examples of what we're working on. So the community controlled space, that's an attempt to get something like the 519 or the Ralph Thornton Center. Those are called Association of Community Centers, and it's a specific type of space that the city can set up, but hopefully funded through the community benefits. But the city has to set up that structure in order for us to be able to get that kind of a space that's actually controlled by a community board of management. It's not controlled by the city staff. So that's an important specific type of space that we want to get. Another sort of general point that we have to be looking at is that, like, there's a huge difference between a process where it's like a consultation and they ask us what we want and then they come back with something, versus a community decision-making process where actual decisions are decided in the meeting. So if people don't agree with something, they can say so, and it has to be modified right then and there, and people have to come up with a solution that people agree on. It's not just left hanging in the air at the end of the meeting, and then maybe they take it into account or they don't. If the meetings that they have with the community are actual decision-making meetings, then the decisions are made and people say, well, we agree with that, and this is our decision. So this is a very different thing. It's not a consultation anymore if we start doing that. And people should really be paying attention when there are processes going on with the city or with TCHC, and noticing whether or not there's a real decision making going on, or are they just listening to people talk. Because we're trying to hope that we can get past that and we can get to real decision making, not just a consultation. So,
you,
I mean, those are two really important things to try to get into this process. The other thing to consider is with the rezoning going on at the same time of community benefits, hopefully the rezoning is not rushed and we can find out what we actually want in community benefits so that the rezoning takes that into account and they don't just put forward a rezoning without even thinking about what the community benefits requirements are, such as the amount of space that's needed for the community center. That kind of stuff has to be decided first before the rezoning is even done.
So does everyone understand that point that Michael's trying to make? It's basically, we're asking our municipal government, specifically, we want to make sure that our developers, before they submit an application to our local government, to a city government, we want to make sure they do their homework and are able to map out all the community assets that are needed. Because this revite will not happen again for decades, right? We have this shot, this opportunity to get it right. And Michael's advice is we need to demand respect. Other communities have had AOCC models of community controlled spaces. We deserve one too. And most importantly, we want to make sure that if there is any consideration of rezoning, what are those social costs? And we want to hear from all of you, by the way. We want to hear from each one of you. This neighborhood association is only strong if we are able to hear from all residents about their opinions of rezoning, right? We haven't made a decision as of yet as a neighborhood association, but we want to hear from you. Zakir, go ahead.
Lots of organizations. There are some organizations that were ignored previously. Now they are taking in their plans. But at the same time, we are observing that lots of new initiatives, new organizations, new proposals are coming, and they are trying to get in. So, for example, new library is coming here. Last year, we came to know that Toronto District School Board, they are also is looking for space in this area, and maybe some others. So my concern is that we are since last 12 years we are fighting for space, and finally they are now trying to build some, maybe what way they are considering, we don't know. But if the demand is going, if this type of demands come from outside, so what will be our prospect in future? Shall we be protected? Will we be given some, or we will be get out? So that's my concern.
I share your concerns, Zakir, and I understand what you mean. Is, are we going to be made a priority? And I agree with you.
In fact, I spoke to the chief librarian in Toronto, and they had already secured money to do a renovation on the old library that's here. And she really did not want to do that. And there were plans that had been drawn up to build a new library that she was really excited about.
I wonder who it's going to be named after.
After our previous, come with the name.
Counselor?
Previous counselor. I'm just
Pam McConnell?
Yeah, after Pam McConnell. So that money is already there from the city. And when Pam went to, her name is Vickery Bowles. And when she went to Vickery, she said, "Oh, I'm really excited about this. I would love to build a new library." So it's not as though the money is not there. And what I said in the chat, I think that TCHC and the builder are being a little coy about this when they link, going to the city, with the building of the library. I don't see that it has anything to do with it, because we already have the money to do that. Okay, so I don't think it has anything to do with it. And it's kind of, it feels like it's kind of a threat from them. Well, if you want a library, excuse me, it's not costing them anything to give us a library. We've got it. We've got it already.
It's funded.
So,
yeah.
It's already funded. But they haven't wanted a library, and we had to push the issue for the last few years. We've been pushing this issue that we want a library in our community. And it's going to be a lot of other things as well. Ms. Bowles has an idea of what she'd like to do. And, there are a lot of things involved in that. And it's quite exciting. So we'll see what happens. But it's not about the money, that's for sure.
Thank you. At a recent meeting that was held around community services and facilities that was attended by a number of members from the various community groups, Miguel made a request that at the next meeting that we have representation there from the Toronto Public Library, and that was agreed to.
So my question here is it like something that we are going to give proposal to the municipality or the government, or we already have some kind of idea that this will have like effective date, time or something?
Excellent question. Phases 1, 2, 3 are funded by all three levels of government: federal, provincial, municipal. Over $1 billion was spent in phases 1 to 3. We talked about how many residents benefited from some important things like home ownership and good jobs. What we've been able to do, Brother Mohammed, is secure support for a trilateral community benefits agreement from Minister Marcy Ian. So she's our federal MP. We've also been able to secure support for a trilateral community benefits agreement from our member of parliament provincially, Suze Marson, who's also in attendance of this meeting. I believe her staff is also attending this meeting. I think Emma is part of our meeting. Welcome, Emma. And what we are trying to do is secure support from our city government, right? And this is where we need your help. A community benefits agreement that encompasses the commitments made by all three levels of government will be a successful community benefits agreement, because you need all three parties to work together to make sure that those priorities are funded, whether it's home ownership, whether it's good jobs, whether it's training, whether it's sustainable funding. So we need that support. And what we're hoping is you will help us secure that support. We're going to be talking about taking action next. And Marlene's going to be speaking to that next. So it's important for us to work together as a community to demand respect. So we have a community benefits agreement, just like other communities across Canada, especially communities where there's a huge amount of equity-seeking groups. A lot of communities that live in Regent Park that are facing systemic barriers. You know, if you read many reports, young people are not getting hired either because of their postal code or because of their last names, right? That is very problematic. We also know that people are dealing with a lot of challenges in securing opportunities. So we want to make it possible for that to happen. And a legally binding agreement, something in writing, will make it possible for us to hold other parties accountable for those commitments. So this is why we are pursuing this community benefits agreement.
Okay. I have been being like that much really last 15 years as far as I remember. And what I would like just to ask you is, in case if we get that opportunity to get rent to own, are they going to evaluate what we used to pay before, or do we have to start from scratch that, you know, like from zero and forget about how much that we pay? Even though I have the record, I can show to them. Like, forget about whatever that, just in case like I would sign tomorrow, let's say. And then are they going to evaluate what we have paid? Like, are they going to give us some kind of credit for that, or we have to start from zero? And how long? It depends your income, how much that I can pay, or I don't know what's going to happen. Just in case, if you start.
So I'll talk about boost and foundation programs, which existed in phases 1 to 3, which allowed residents like yourself or neighbors to access home ownership. What you had to do is qualify. So you must qualify.
What is the condition to qualify?
The condition to qualify is basically your income level, and we can share that information via email to everyone. I don't want to get into too many details, but basically you have to qualify based on your income, 1, and 2, maybe they'll check your credit score. The bank has to qualify you for a mortgage for phases 1 to 3, and then you will also have to qualify for boost and foundational funding or support. If you live in the unit. So for the 17 families that were able to, 17 residents were able to access home ownership in Regent Park. If they were to live in their unit for 20 years, their loans will be forgiven after 20 years.
Oh, I'm like that, exactly what you're talking about. I think I will be qualified, like exactly the points that are you touching right now. And definitely I have a confidence. Like, is there, I mean, is it effective now or when?
It's not effective. The programs have been suspended. We are now lobbying other levels of government to restore those programs. So those programs have been suspended. So no one can use them now. After those 17 families use them, it stopped. Right. There's been a lot of comments on the chat. Many great ideas. Thank you. Thank you for your participation. This is really awesome. We're going to go through all the comments in the chat and we're going to respond. Announcements for TCHC tenants. Due to changes in the laundry and dryer payment option, please return the old card your old card in an envelope and submit the envelope with your full name, address, and give it to your superintendent. Sparkle will reimburse the money back. We've heard from many TCHC tenants that were upset regarding the changes and were worried about losing money. So this is the solution that we've identified. We'll continue to meet with TCHC to address other issues that come up. For members of the community, specifically the Sudanese Canadian community, who some of them who are in attendance in this meeting, would like to request our neighbors to contact the MP and also to visit SCOUN, which is the Sudanese Canadian Association of Ontario. There's a coup d'etat in Sudan. A lot of people are dying every day. The internet has been cut, and your support will be so meaningful to end the suffering that many Sudanese Canadians are experiencing because of the loss of family members abroad. So thank you so much for that support. The next piece is the call to action. So I'm going to ask Marlene to start us off, and then I'm going to post the rest. Go ahead, Marlene.
Okay, call to action. So you've heard a great deal tonight, but please provide RPNA with your contact information so we can keep you connected and informed on the planning for rezoning and on the coming community benefits as we move forward. So at this point, you know, we've presented you with two main issues of immediate concern: the rezoning of the Tridel building and who will be the decision makers regarding the community benefits for our residents. We've offered you both sides of each issue, and now it's up to you. If you have need of more information, please contact us. Join the coalition, get involved. It is vital that you get informed, that you take a stand, and that you get involved. Because here's the thing: if you don't get active and you don't take a stand one way or the other, these decisions will be made for us.
You're either on the menu or you're getting.
Pardon? Yeah, it'll be taken out of our hands. These decisions will be made for us by TCHC and the builder. And then we'll have nothing to say. So please, please make yourself really informed and take a stand. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. We're really happy to have you here. Thank you.
Yeah, I think James Duff had said he's still unclear about the rezoning issue. I think just to sum that up, the question about the rezoning process is the density and the level of heights of the towers. The question is whether it's sensible for us to get high density in this neighborhood and what the social cost of that density is. So I think in many ways, there'll be future opportunities where Tridel and Toronto Community Housing will be doing community consultations. I think for now, they're scheduled monthly sessions where they'll provide further details of the exact height of the towers and some of the consequences. As some people have heard, some of these towers will be facing Regent Park as opposed to the Gerrard area. So I think if you want further clarity on those conversations on what at stake, what do you call, look forward to those meetings, invitations from Tridel and TCHC.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify something that Rasha asked.
Go ahead.
About the library. It's not the city that is committed to put the library in. The city has committed to the library group, okay? They gave them the money to renovate the old library, okay? But the chief librarian would rather build a new library. And when it was proposed that she bring the library into Regent Park, she was very happy to do that. And that's what she is proposing that she do. She wants to bring the library here. It has nothing to do with the $26.8 million. That's the thing. It has nothing to do with the $26.8 million. That $19 million plus is totally separate from that money.
Thanks, Marlene. I just got a little confused. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I thought they were holding that, as a carrot on a stick, that if you want the library, we have to
That's what it
renegotiate.
makes, that's what they've made it sound like. That's why I said
Okay.
they're being coy about it. And it's not at all, not at all.
Okay, thank goodness.
Thank you.
So these are the last things that we're going to discuss today. So a call to action. For those that are looking for those opportunities and want to be informed through a list, please send an email to rpna.info@gmail.com. Okay, because what we want is we want to be intentional in supporting you, Ali, and other neighbors prepare to qualify for access to home ownership. So now I'm going to share this screen, and it's basically concluding our meeting. What I would like to ask all of you, we had over 100 people show interest in this meeting, and you folks have been here for almost 3 hours. Please support your neighborhood association. It's an advocacy-based organization. So stay informed on the rezoning plans. Keep learning more about community benefits. We have another meeting on Monday from 6 to 8. Please look at the chat on how to register and attend that meeting. But also contact your elected representatives. Minister Marcy Ian, MPP Suze Morrison. Our MPP Suze Morrison was in this meeting. So thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Councillor Christine Wong Tam.
What is
I
she?
believe our staff were in this meeting. Contact the elected representatives and demand investments in a community through a community benefits agreement so that we are able to deliver on a successful revite that doesn't leave many of us behind. And also stay in touch with your neighborhood association, your Regent Park Neighborhood Association. We're stronger together when we work together as residents. Join our email list. Email rpna.info@gmail.com. Learn more about the Regent Park Community Benefits Coalition. Visit www.regentparkcoalition.ca, but also engage with us in social media. Join our RPNA community discussion board. Finally, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. From the bottom of our hearts, from the Regent Park Neighborhood Association, we are only strong as your participation, as your involvement. Without you, there's no neighborhood association. So I'm gonna stop sharing the screen, and I wanna say thank you once again to everyone.
Thank you everyone for coming. As Waleed had said and Marlene had said, this only works if we are working together. Please send us your email. Please connect with us. And we're in the midst of a critical time where Toronto Community Housing is currently not listening to some of the things we're saying. So we would hope your support. And when we reach out to you to join our efforts, please pick up the call, come to the meetings, because as Waleed had said, only when we voice our concerns can change happen. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
Thank you, Ishmael. Marlene, go ahead.
Only one short statement. Don't let decisions be made for us.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what we need but us.
Yes.
Know what we need. That's it. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Marlene.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out all of our social media platforms. For more information, check out our website.